Hello and welcome to Epiphytic Cacti. Today I figured I was out here and I was repotting some more little Schlumbergera truncata hybrid babies, and I realized it is probably time to also deal with some of these guys. So I did a video about this, which was about basically just ridding difficult epiphyllum cuttings in LECA. And you can see here it's actually starting to get some algae and stuff like that. FYI, not a big deal that it has that algae really. It's just because I have it in a clear glass here and the sunlight is hitting it. So the algae is growing. Nothing serious. You can see all these little roots here and everything. But, you know, ideally this cutting is now actually nice and firm and plump and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm pretty much just going to transplant this guy. And with these guys, I'm going to move these guys over because we're going to do those guys next. Ooh. And that's one of the sad things about LECA is the little balls. They fall and then they roll all over the place. It's really kind of a pain. But we're just pretty much going to pull this guy out of here, or, you know, to be really gentle so that we don't damage the roots. We'll kind of pour out and then just gently pull that out like that. And you'll see here that this is what these little roots look like. And some of the roots are in fact water roots and some of the roots are not. So the expectation here is that the water roots will actually die off. But the ones that had actually attached themselves into the LECA, hopefully they don't die off. So all we're really going to do is just put that guy in there. Like I said, we just want to get as minimal damage as possible, right? Just going to put that guy in there like that. I made sure that some of his areoles were underneath the soil line. You know, new growth from those areoles will actually kind of be the best growth because eventually this original cutting will die off. It's something unusual actually. If you grow these guys but you don't grow epiphyllum, it's actually kind of a difference. Is I don't think I've ever seen the original clade that was rooted from these guys or some other things die off the way that epiphyllum do eventually. So then I have these guys, and this is kind of a fun story. So these guys are also in LECA, and these guys were actually put in here after. And the reason after that epiphyllum was long after actually. And here's kind of what happened. This is a species. So this is Schlumbergera Kautskyi. So like your Schlumbergera truncata or your Schlumbergera opportunities, it's a species. So this is a little species guy, and he came a long way, and he came during COVID. So he got very, very stuck. And so by the time I got him, he was looking so tragic that I was not sure that he would even really be viable. But, you know, with my little trusty LECA thing here, you know, I just put them in this little container, and then I give them like little tiny bits of water or whatever. And then I, you know, like you can see that it's plumped up and stuff like that. And by the time that happens, I generally know that I can probably take them and put them in a normal mixture. So we're gonna see whether or not this guy has, you know, viable growth here. And he does. There you go. And you can see just how tiny those roots are. So the roots can actually be so tiny just to intake water, and that's fine. But all I'm going to do here now with this guy is I've got this little pot here, and I'm just going to kind of fill him. I want to be really, 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 really careful with that guy's roots, so I'm being kind of odd by not setting it down. There we go. Put those guys in there like that. And you can see he doesn't have a ton of roots here. So he just really has like these little baby roots. So all I'm going to do is just kind of shallowly, just kind of set him down very gently in the places that I want him to be in. And because there's 3 of these cuttings here, I'm going to try to kind of space them out a little bit like this. And then I'm just going to fill in around those guys, not too deep. You know, I think that it generally half of the clade is supposed to be showing. This guy is gonna be difficult. There we go. We go like that. And then we're just gonna fill in the rest of the way around there. There we go. Clade might just be a little too deep like that. There we go. So, you know, like I said, you really only kind of want about half that clade buried. And this clade was kind of strange because he was also kind of small. There we go. So just like that. So now he's potted. Got my little tag that will go in there, and he looks excellent. And he'll just, you know, essentially what's going to happen is he's just going to kind of like hang out outside here, get acclimatized and stuff like that. If it rains, you know, no big deal, but I'll keep a really close eye on those guys and try to make sure that they don't get super wet. Like if it starts raining like 2-3 days in a row, then I start to worry a little bit. So then we've got this guy here. So same thing, came in that same, and the exact same package. You can see he's having some difficult times, and you can actually see how rough some of these guys actually were. So that is just paper thin. That is not viable. That is not going to make it. But this gives you an idea that these guys were actually only doing a little bit better than this guy. So the LECA trick here with this, it really does tend to work. And this is actually, you know, also a species. So it's Schlumbergera truncata. So all I'm really going to do here is just kind of like, you know, get this guy out of there a little bit. Check him out. He doesn't really have the same kind of root system, but I am not really going to worry too much about that because I think he's got like new little roots starting to poke out and stuff like that. I'm just going to go ahead and, you know, pot them all up here. It's really nice outside right now, and honestly, like the best thing that you can do for your epiphytic cacti is like if it's nice and warm and it's toasty and, you know, weather permits, the temperature and stuff, I mean, if it's not too cool, like the best thing you can really do with these guys is really and truly just put them outside. You know, like when I put them in the LECA, they have to stay inside because unfortunately, there was just no drainage in those. And then here we have this last one here. This guy here is the first time you can see where he doesn't really look all that great. That cutting actually kind of looks like it's not really rotting, but it's also not really going to make it. And you can see the top piece is all kind of shriveled up too. You know, maybe I could save that guy, but I don't think I'm all that worried about it because this is not really the most rare hybrid. It's not the most common, but it's also not the most rare. So this is Schlumbergera Tenshi no Mai. I hope I said that right. But actually you can get it in the United States, and I think, you know, probably in other places under the name Schlumbergera Angel Dance. I believe it's Angel Dance. It is, what's different about it is that it is actually a, very gently, there we go. So you can see it's got those little roots there on the bottom, and that is good enough. So we'll pot this guy up too. What's different about this is actually that it is a albino, and by albino, you know, obviously you can see that the growth isn't green. I mean, the growth isn't white. By albino, it's actually the flower that's albino. So the flower is completely white. It is the stigma and everything. It's just completely white. So it's really kind of a fascinating thing, especially because in nature that really doesn't happen very often. And I also think that there's something else about them. I don't quite remember what it was, but you know, you can always Google it and do some research there. I think there's something else about albinos that's real particular. Like even in the wild, if you get the albino flowers like that, I think it was something along the lines of them having the ability to survive was pretty limited. Because you know, it makes sense. Like if you have the colorful flower or whatever, and it's like attracting its normal pollinators, and then all of a sudden it like has that, you know, some sort of a mutation and it ends up being albino, you know, like it might be hit or miss as to whether or not it'll attract the proper pollinators for it to even continue to grow, so, or to continue to propagate itself. So, but there you go. That's really all there is to that, you know, little LECA rooting thing. And these guys, they shouldn't have such a rough time. You know, I have done like rooting in water or whatever, and then tried to plant them. And, you know, honestly, because it's not the right kind of roots, all those roots just die off. So essentially all you're really doing is actually making sure that your cuttings are extremely hydrated before you plant them, which gives them a better chance of rooting before they completely dehydrate. So it is a good trick if you have cuttings that are extremely dehydrated. It's a good trick to try to, you know, like get them rehydrated in some water or whatever. you know, but the LECA, because it actually forms, you know, they're not really forming in that water, in the bottom of the water entirely. They're actually forming around these little clay balls. They're not going to have such a hard time to be able to, I think, acclimatize, you know, with a sudden switch like that. And you'll notice here that my normal mix actually has these LECA balls in it, but I actually wanted to try these. It's pretty much the same thing, it's just slightly different, and it's a different color, kind of like the gray a little bit more, but I just wanted to try something a little bit different and see what I thought of it. So there we have it. Hopefully that was kind of informative, and thank you for watching, and happy cacti growing.